Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome to our first Solvere Connect webinar. And first things first, I see that my messaging coming out to you have received. I believe you've received because I'm getting some messages back saying you've received that okay. Can you just quickly also send me a message, any of you, if you're hearing me okay, or how does that sound come through? Just making sure that you're hearing me loud and clear. Don't worry about my mug too much. You can turn that off if you want, but more importantly, you need to be able to hear. Otherwise, it probably won't roll that well for us. So, got a message coming through. What do we got? Yep. Okay, good volume, perfect. Okay, great. Well, we've avoided most mistakes that the webinar organisers make, and that's sound and ability to communicate. So fantastic. We've had a win. So it's just gone 8 o'clock, so we will make a start. So thank you all for tuning in and appreciate you being on time, ready to roll. Now, I wanted to keep the group small, as we said, maximum of 10. So we've pretty much got that, which is fantastic. But I want to make it as interactive as possible, and how I want to do that is just for you to continue to ask questions throughout my talking, so that I'm just not yapping away and it's all being non-relevant to you. I obviously want you to get as much as you can out of this this next 30, 45. I'm not sure actually how long it's going to go for, but I know that we'll cover the three topics that we mentioned. Number one, paying down your mortgage. Number two, buyer's agent and the pros and cons of a buyer's agent, and you might well also have some experiences or stories to tell around that. And also budget and cash flow, so how to maximize that as well. So there, I believe in my dealings as a property coach, three of the big topics that people are always wanting to know more about, or I suppose fine-tuning to make sure we're getting or maximizing those three parts, or definitely the two parts of paying down our mortgage and cash flow in our life, because we don't want to see it going to waste. So if I can get you guys to message through out of those three which one is more of a priority for you, and that will give me an ability to spend a little bit more time on one of those three more so than the other two. Or if you just want to say, look, all three is relevant, go to town, John, and do your thing for those three topics equally, then we can do that as well. So I want to make these webinars a regular occurrence, and also make it extremely relevant to those who have committed or taken the time out of their day to actually tune into them. So I do drink a lot of water throughout the webinars as well, so just bear with me on that one. So let's get into it. The first one is so most of you are saying all three, so that's great. Makes it all pretty consistent. Excellent. The first thing we'll go into is obviously it's general information only, so I'm told I have to give these disclaimers in the world that we're in these days. So definitely it's general information, nothing personal to your situation. I'll give real life examples where possible, but essentially, obviously, if you want more individualized help and guidance, then we're here to do that at another time. So general information tonight. So let's talk about paying down our own mortgage. So I'm presuming tonight that you all have a mortgage, or at least have the ambition to have a mortgage at some stage in the near future. And what I mean by mortgage is that you have an ambition to own your own home that you live in. So I classify that as a form of bad debt in our life. So bad debt being it's not income producing asset according to the banks. So I call that bad debt because I can't claim the running costs of that particular mortgage or the insurances or rates or those things associated with it, right? So we want to get rid of that bad debt as quickly as we can in our life. Now, another form of bad debt in our life is a credit card debt or personal loan, something like that. A car loan in most cases is also considered bad debt. Investment debt, however, because it's an income producing asset, it's considered by the banks as good debt, and it's considered in our life as good debt because we can claim the running expenses of that property. Now, come this weekend with the election, who knows what's happening going forward into 2020, but at this stage, we can claim the running expenses or at least the negative aspect of that going forward as an investor. So I've got some tips that some of you may have already seen in the videos that we've done prior on paying down our own mortgage in the quickest possible time frame. We know that it's 30 years that the banks want us to get it bowled over in. We'd like to do it in much quicker time frame than that. So by much quicker, I mean 10 to 12 years. Like, I don't think we should be spending much more than that doing that. Right now, if we've got a $2 million home loan, I think that's all relative to the amount of income we've got. If we've got a $300,000 home loan, again, all relative to the income that we're on, right? So I don't think the actual debt level should actually matter to a massive extent. So the first one, and a no-brainer for me, is you must be paying principal and interest. Interest only over the 30 years will not pay a cent off the principal amount or the actual debt. You'll be just covering the bank's interest and they'll love you for it, and et cetera, et cetera. So you must pay down that principal amount that they advise as to how much that is, and make sure you're doing that. The second part of that is make sure you're making fortnightly repayments on your mortgage. So what that does, and you may have heard of that tip before, that makes one more payment per year. Now, you might think, well, that doesn't really matter too much, but over the course of 10 years, there's 10 extra payments that you've made. That might be 20, 30, 40 grand extra that you've put into your home loan, and you don't really miss it. One extra payment per year, you don't really miss, as opposed to monthly, that is. The third one is you must have an offset account. So for those who are reasonably new to the world of finance and property, an offset account is where it's sitting next to, or it's an account that's sitting next to your loan, and every dollar that you have sitting in that offset account is working in your favor against the debt that you've got on that property. So as an example, if you've got a $500,000 debt and you've got $50,000 sitting in your offset account, then you're actually only paying interest on the $450,000, not the entire $500,000. Does that make sense? So having money sitting in that offset, because interest is calculated daily by the banks, even if you've got it there for 5 or 6 days of the month, it's having some small impact on your interest that you need to pay for that particular month. If you can have that money sitting there for the whole year, then that has a massive impact on the interest that you pay, and it means that you're able to pay more of the principal off in that short term. Right? If you've got it sitting there and it's continuing to build, then obviously that enhances that quite dramatically. So an offset account, in my mind, is a no-brainer. Most banks should offer an offset account with their loan. If they don't, they're rubbish, and you need to look for a lender that's definitely giving you that offset account. Right now, from an investment point of view, having an offset account is not the end of the world. If you don't have an offset account on your investment property, not a massive one. For me personally, I prefer to put all my money towards my mortgage and pay the minimal amount I can off my investment properties in the short term until I'm sitting there with no owner-occupier debt or no bad debt in my life, as explained at the start, which means I can then concentrate. Once I've got rid of that bad debt, then I can start to pay down my investment properties. And that's when I might look to go principal and interest or try and have an investment offset account, something similar. All right, does that make sense? So making sure you've got an offset account. Surplus funds is another big one. So a lot of clients come to me and say, well, I've got $500 sitting here for the kids account, or $1,000 for holidays, or $2,000 for emergencies, or little sub accounts that are tucked away and no one knows anything about them, right? Those little funds can quickly add up, right? So in my mind, why wouldn't we have them sitting offsetting our bad debt? Again, can accelerate the rate that we're paying down the mortgage over that 10 to 12 year period instead of 25, 30 years, right? Now, you may be asking yourself or asking me, well, how do I then, I suppose, designate or apportion that to my kids or my holidays or my surplus funds or whatever? Right. The answer to that is we can find a lender that has multiple offsets against our bad debt or our owner-occupier mortgage. So CBA, for example, and this is an advertisement for CBA by any means, they have unlimited offsets as far as I'm concerned, or as far as I know. I know a client that's got 7 offset accounts on their own mortgage where one of them's for kids, one of them's for holidays, one of them's for the straight mortgage, one of them's for the investment property. There's 7 of them sitting there, right? All labelled, all very clear as to what they're doing or what they're performing for. But all of those 7 offsets are offsetting the bad debt. No brainer in my world. So surplus funds, get them in there. Is my next tip there. Tax returns. Tax returns are can be quite a lucrative time of year for some people, especially business owners. But if you're in a higher income position and you're paying a fair bit of tax and you've got some deductions, then you may also get a reasonable tax return. Again, whack that tax return into the offset account. And that goes with every other bonus that you may get along the way. So even if it's sitting there for 3 days or 4 days or 10 days or 20 days or a month, it's still better than nothing, right? It's better to reduce the interest you're paying, even just for a day. Shop around is my next tip. Make sure, and I suppose to pre-frame that, I've got clients that come and start working with us that for 5 years or 6 years or longer haven't addressed their current mortgage. It was what was set up when they first got the mortgage and haven't touched it since. So they don't know their interest rate. They know who the lender is, but they're not fussed. They're just gone and make their payments each month and then get on with their life. Okay. Big win to go and shop around every 12 months. Yes, it's a hassle. It's like chasing cheaper insurance policies or cheaper phone plans and things like that. But trust me, it will work in your favor over the long term. So the other option is set and forget, pay it off in 30 years, but don't come whinging, right? Get it done in 10 or 12. These are the things that we need to put in place to make sure that we're giving ourselves the best chance to pay that down. So shop around. There's always better deals out there, as long as you're not making too many applications, which will hurt your credit score. It'll have hits on your or inquiries on you, which you don't want. But a good sophisticated mortgage broker will absolutely eat that for breakfast and give you the best result there as you see fit. I don't think any sooner than 12 months is worthwhile. But yeah, definitely assess it reasonably often so that you make sure that you've got that side of it covered and you know that you've got the best rate out there. Now, just today I published something on our Solvere Connect from a a mortgage broker that I use in Melbourne, and they were talking about mid-threes for investment lending, fixed rates, which is it's the cheapest rates we'll be seeing probably in the next 20 years is my estimation. It's definitely the cheapest I've seen in 20 years of investing. So if you can get that on your investment properties, imagine what you can get on your owner occupier. So we're probably talking early threes, to be honest. So if it's got a 4 on it or a 5, we're definitely getting stitched. Okay. The last one, and it's a bit more of a, if I've got an investment property portfolio or a share portfolio, it applies to me. If it doesn't, it's probably something for the future, is if I've got 2, 3, 4, 5 properties or a number of different shares that are paying dividends, the rent or the dividends can be sitting also in the offset account on your bad debt. There's no reason why you can't do that. It does take a lot more management and I suppose ensuring that you've got your account set up and you know where your debits are coming from and things like that. So yes, it's a bit more fiddly, but again, if it can save you 3 to 5 years, would you be prepared to put in that short-term pain, right? In most cases, the answer is yes. So again, yes, you want to keep them separate for tax purposes, but you've got the ability to sit there and push some funds into the offset account even for a short time. It will definitely help you along the journey. If you're a business owner sitting here, and I think some listening are business owners, I think there is potentially an easier win there where you're in a maybe an unpredictable cash flow position in your business, but it's sometimes there may be surplus funds in your business sitting there that might have to go out in 2 months' time, but for the time being, where can that go? If you make a transaction record of it, it can, again, sit in your offset account, paying down your mortgage. Now, when I say paying it down, you don't want to back yourself into a corner by putting all your surplus funds actually paying down the mortgage, because then you have to say to the bank, I want the money back, put your hand up, and that's a bit of a rigmarole. You want to be able to have it sitting in the offset, right? You must know the difference between that. Sitting in the offset, very different from actually paying down the principal amount or the loan amount. Does that make sense? Let me know as a message if it doesn't. Okay, so they're my tips for paying down your mortgage in the quickest possible time frame. If you are already on that journey and you're already doing those things, then fantastic. The last 20 minutes has been nothing for you. Only joking. In all seriousness, I don't meet too many people that are doing all of those things concurrently, month in, month out. We might be doing a few of them, which is fantastic. But yeah, if you're doing all of them, it could be the difference between 5 and 10 years. Absolutely. And I'm living proof of that. So send me through any messages or questions if you have anything in relation to paying down your mortgage sooner. Otherwise, we'll move on to the actual cash flow management and the dirty word budget, I suppose. I don't know why I use the word budget, because I don't like it personally, but it just resonates with people as to, if you use the word budget, you know what you're going to cover from a topic point of view. So in relation to cash flow management, and I call it cash flow management because it's managing the cash flow in your personal life, right? Business aside, as I said, business owners, you've got your separate cash flow management system. And what I find is people in business manage their cash really well in their business. And then in a lot of cases in their personal situation, it's a dog's breakfast. Right? It doesn't make sense to me. But either way, we need to have our cash flow management system in our life really fine-tuned and smick, so that it's setting us up for the next 30 years. It should be really a set and forget procedure that you've got in your life that works for you. and you shouldn't be stressed by it every day or week or month, and it shouldn't be changing much at all. The only things that change really is if you get a pay rise, or if you get some bonuses, or if your expenses dramatically increase because of things like kids. They'll definitely do that for you, or your mortgage amounts change or something like that. Right. But I want you to create a system whereby you can have that management in place, and no matter what happens, it's safe and secure going forward, right? Who's excited by that? I'm sure you're all nodding there saying, yeah, I'm really excited about that. Hopefully, I'm talking to those who have already got it down pat. If you haven't, please message me and tell me. Don't have to tell me what's going wrong, or you can if you want, but I'd like to know what's happening in your cash flow life that's not working, or if it is working, what's really working well. I'll give you, I suppose, a step-by-step procedure that you can follow that allows you to get to the end of that step and say, yes, I've completed that. I'm ready to move on to the next step. All right. And I do this with my clients. If you don't complete that step, we're not ready to go on to the next step, because otherwise it's not fair to the next step. All right. So step one, like it or not, you need to know what you are spending each month, period. You need to record historically what you have spent for the month of April just gone, right? At the end of May, we need to know what's gone out in the month of May. Now, people come to me and say, oh, but May was a bad month because I had this, and this going out. Well, I don't care. It needs to be a line in the sand to say, this is what I spent in May, this is what I spent in April, and over a 12-month period, this is exactly what I spent in my personal life. You need to understand that first and foremost. Now, the really diligent ones will go back 6 months and look at the last 6 months of spending, and then get an analysis or an average, right? And ideally, you want an average over 12 months, okay? And I'll show you a document that I'm happy to share with you if you need one that covers off on that, and you can use it to complete that exercise to give you a number. So you need to know what you spend before you can go forward and forecast in your life. Right now, it's not the most enjoyable exercise going, but I got taught early days that you need to learn to love the things that you hate. Right now, that was one of them for me. I just didn't want to know, probably because I wasn't saving any money. It was annoying me, and I was fearful of when the next paycheck was coming in as a business owner early on, like I'm talking 15 years ago. Now, different story, but I think you've got to own the situation and not be stressed by it. You've got to take ownership of it. The only way you can take ownership of something is through research and knowledge, and the knowledge part is key here. So know what you spend. Once you've done that exercise, you can then look at, well, what can I cut out? What am I prepared to cut out in my life that is going to help me with my cash flow position now, but also future me, right? So what am I paying future John into the future to set myself up for 10, 20, 50, whatever years you've got potentially left in your life, right? So I put that into two separate categories. We've got non-negotiable spending. So that's mortgage, that's rent, that's bills, insurances, that's food on the table, potentially kids spending, if that's school or uniforms, things like that. And then there is lifestyle spending, so discretional spending, and that's the area that we need to really focus down on. We can't really change too much of the non-negotiables because we need them to exist in our life. Unless we packed up and went around Australia in a combi van, we need rent, or we need to pay rent, or we need to cover our mortgage, right? So you need to understand in two separate categories what are your non-negotiables and highlight them, and conversely, what are your discretionary spending amounts, right? And then focus and look at, well, do I need to spend $400 a month on going out or eating out? Can I cut that back to $200? How much do I spend on, I don't know, grooming? Do I need to spend that much on a haircut? Or I don't know your situation, but just giving hypothetical examples where you can fine tune that, right? I'm a massive fan of living your life now because you don't know what's around the corner. However, there are examples of living your life now comfortably, and there are examples of being extravagant now and absolutely just wasting money, right? And usually most Australians spend what they earn. So if you get a pay rise, guess what? We keep spending that same amount, which is rubbish. That's why we line in the sand. We need to know an amount that we spend on average each month, averaged out over 12 months. So then you can't argue that, oh, that was Christmas month or that was birthday month. It's all averaged out. And then you know going forward what we can cut back on and still have the comfortable lifestyle, right? I'd be surprised if you're working full time. I would be surprised if there wasn't an extra $300 to $500 a month floating around somewhere that's you can pick up and put towards future you, right? So some of that discretionary spending, coffee, lunches, clothes, dining out, meeting with friends, all those sort of things. Now, there's different formats that we can go and do that without having to pay top dollar for it, right? So I won't go into detail, but that's just examples of how we can look at that. So step one, absolutely need to know what you spend. And then step two, see what you can cut back on and look at those numbers. So you might then produce two different documents, what you've got now and then potentially the amounts or the areas that you can cut back on, right? So I'm just going to show you a document now. If I share the screen. So hopefully you guys can see that, but this is, I should really take the budget name out of it really, shouldn't I? But just an example here, a net salary, I've just put in a figure of 10,000 per month. So you can see daily, weekly, fortnightly, monthly, quarterly, semi-annually or annually. It's pretty cool because you can put in some different time frames there as to what you get paid or how often the expense comes out. So we look at in the area of housing expenses, what are they? I've just thrown in a mortgage amount there, electricity as an example, and it's purely, it self-calculates on the right-hand side. Vehicle one, I've just put some rego in. Obviously there'd be fuel and those sort of things, maybe tolls if you're in the big smoke. Shopping expenses, I've just thrown in $800 a month for groceries, $200 for takeaway, and then your living expenses down below that. So it's all categorized there for you, and you can just simply throw in your amounts and away you go. Then at the bottom, you've got your personal expenses. That might include your insurances as well, dental, savings as well on top of that. So that gives you a total of 73,200 in this example. So if I scroll back up to the top, the total amount of income net, it's got to be a net amount, not a gross amount, is 120K. And my annual expenses here were 73,200. So if I scroll below, I either get a green light or a red light. In this example, I've got a green light. I'm saving roughly, let's say, just under $1,000 a week or 47,000 roughly per annum, right? Or should be saving. So if the discrepancy between what you've completed and what's actually in the bank account saving each month, then you haven't put your true expenses into this model, right? Does that make sense? So it's a great exercise to look you in the eyes to see what's going out, and then conversely, what you can then do with it is forecast an amount that you want to spend in certain areas of your life, i.e. personal. Hopefully that makes sense. Drop in any messages if you've got any questions around that. No questions at the moment. Cool. Okay. So that was my example that I use with some clients on how to complete that. The third amount is, well, that basically the third step, is the difference between what am I spending and what am I earning, right? And to know that amount. And that amount is basically step 4. This is how much I'm going to pay future John or future Billy or future Amy, whoever it is, right? So that amount there equates to roughly, let's call it $1,000 a week. That'd be nice, some people are saying. $1,000 a week. Now, when most people try and save money, what happens? They spend what they have in their paycheck and then try to save an amount at the end. And 99 times out of 100, that fails. Why? Because our emotions kick into our life and we say, well, there'll be another paycheck tomorrow, so I can go out and reward myself for the hard work I've done. Right, fantastic. Okay, so we've got to reverse engineer this. And the way we do that is by saying, I know that I'm spending X or should be spending X amount per week or per month. I know I can now put $1,000 away to future John. So as soon as I get paid per fortnight or per month, I'm going to put away that $1,000 per week into a separate account. And if we're following the mortgage payment system, we'd put it into a separate offset account for future John. Yeah, everyone clear with that? Hopefully, yes. If you haven't got an offset or you're renting and you don't need to have an offset, then it's just simply an account that's out of sight, out of mind, and you don't actually can have an app for it, or you don't have any sort of attraction to it that says I can go and spend that. The rule of thumb is you can't get it back. Once you've given it to future John, you can't get it back for today John. All right. So that psychology sets you up for the next 30 years, or it should. Right now, in some way, shape, or form, it's a system that works, but it may need to be tweaked for you depending on how you run your life, how anal you are about tracking expenses and how often you get paid and those sort of things, right? But essentially, if it's $100 a week or $1,000 a week, the number absolutely is irrelevant. It's the concept, right? I don't care if it's $20 a week. It's an amount that says I'm putting an amount away for future me, and I'm doing it every week and I'm feeling good about it. Then I can start to up it to 50 a week, and then away we go, right? All the bonuses, all the tax returns, and any extra surplus that comes into my life also goes in there. So if I get a pay rise, now I'm saving more than $1,000 a week. I'm not spending that extra amount of pay rise. I'm actually putting the difference in there as well. So it might go from $1,000 a week to $1,200 a week as an example, okay? Hopefully that makes sense. Step number 5, so let's go through the first 4 steps. Step 1, know what you spend. Step 2 is, what can I cut back on? Is there anything out there that it's glaringly obvious I can pull back on? If not, fantastic, continue as is. Step 3, what's the difference between your income and your expenses based on the model that you've completed? And then divide that by 12, and that's the monthly amount that you'll then start to put away. You might want to make a fortnightly amount if you get paid fortnightly, but whatever works for you, right? Step 4 is saving or putting that amount away in the timeframes that you have allocated yourself. Step 5 is then saying, right, how do I save faster? Because there'll come a time where you can say, I've exhausted, I've pulled out all stops, I cannot save an extra cent on what I'm already saving, right? Now, if you're sitting there saying, I've exhausted all stops and I'm not saving anything, trust me, you need help with that, right? Not help in general, just help. Because I don't care how old you are, how much income you're on, everyone can save money, right? And it doesn't have to be $1,000 a month, right? Step 5 is, well, if I'm already exhausting my expenses list and I can't actually trim that anymore, what are my options? Well, the only other option is to start earning more, right? Now, how do I earn more, right? If you're in a 9 to 5 and you're an employee, you need to get a pay rise or get a second job. Now, the second job's not exciting. I don't think that enhances your lifestyle at all. It just puts extra stress in your life. The pay rise is an interesting one. And when working with clients, what I talk to them about and go deep with them about is, well, how much do you like your job and how much value can you add in your workplace? What edge can you get in your work that will mean that you're actually paid more for the same hours that you're there, right? Having a think about what you're passionate about, what your skill set is, and you may be surprised as to where you can have a win there for the greater good, which means getting yourself a pay rise and then allowing that amount to contribute to future you. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. So that's step 5. So 5 steps in that system of income, cash flow management, expenses. I'm not using the word budget anymore for you, right? It's cash flow management system. How can I enhance that to the best of my ability with what I've got? Okay. Now, everyone's got different goals in their life. As a side note, you need to ensure that you do have those goals recorded and written down and told someone about. You must know what you're wanting to achieve. Otherwise, we're just roaming through life without any real control or purpose. And when we hit an obstacle, it's very easy for us to get knocked off the cliff because we're not focused or motivated on future us. We're just living day to day, and that can bring a lot of people undone. All right. So know what jumps you out of bed each day is really critical as a side note. Okay, so let's move on to our third topic, which is buyer's agents. So first of all, I want to pre-frame it by saying, well, what is a buyer's agent and what do they do in what sort of role would they play for you as a homeowner, right? So I'll also pre-frame it by saying, Solvere, we offer a buyer's agent service side to what we do as property coaches and property analysts. So I'll talk a little bit about that, but there's definitely I'm not here tonight to sell our buyer's agent service, that's for sure. So what does a buyer's agent do? A buyer's agent basically acts on your behalf to go and purchase a property for you based on your strategy, your finance capacity, your emotions, and everything else put in. So they'll do all the hard work to negotiate, to visit open homes, to put their hand up at auction, to go and act on your behalf, to agree on an agreed value or a purchase price, to take it off the vendor's hands and for you to have ownership over that, right? So that's essentially what a buyer's agent does. Now, they're very popular in probably Brisbane and Melbourne are the two capital cities that have got the most buyer's agent feel about them. Other capital cities, yes, they exist, and regional centres probably not. Us regional folk probably think we can find our own property locally because we know all about the suburbs, or we think we do anyway. So not as prevalent in the regional areas. So that's what a buyer's agent does. Now, what they usually do is charge a fee based on as a percentage, and usually on the percentage of the purchase price. Okay, so I'll give you an example. the most common buyer's agent percentage fee out there at the moment is probably 2%. Or 2% plus GST of the purchase price. So if I'm buying something for $1 million and they negotiate on my behalf and they find that for me and I pay $1 million, I'd be paying them $20,000 or $20,000 plus GST. Okay, so a nice bit of income for the buyer's agent and there for that one purchase. Why would I choose one as opposed to going and finding that $1 million property myself? I'm going to go through in a moment. So I'm going to list the positives and the negatives of a buyer's agent service. But essentially, the percentage of purchase price is usually how most buyer's agent services act. In some cases, if we're in Melbourne, probably in the last 5 years, say, the median price has gone up to $1 million anyway. In the eastern or southeastern suburbs, definitely closer to town, you might be buying a property for $5 and $6 million. Do you pay 2% on that? Usually, in a lot of cases, it's capped at say 20,000 or 25,000 or something like that. So it's every situation is a little bit different, but in general, that's what I've experienced over time. So first of all, let's look at the positives of a buyer's agent. So why would I use one? Right now, the first one I would say is you're engaging them for their expertise and knowledge around property in general, and usually you're engaging them for their knowledge in that particular town or suburb that you're wanting to buy in. Right. So there's, I'm presuming, or I'm saying tonight that you would be using the buyer's agent to find your home to live in. Okay. So you're really giving them the scope as to what you need and the suburbs that you're wanting to buy in, and then they go away and do the rest for you, right? So the first one is their expertise or their knowledge. Now, what I mean by that is things like historical data on the particular suburbs of what's sold, knowing that they've visited open homes or been to auctions previously, so they know what things have sold for, and they've got the data in the background to check all of that as well. RP data or Core Logic might be one of the tools that they use, right? Very concise with their attack on finding you a property. So using a buyer's agent minimizes the time that you need to have involved going to open homes, bidding at auctions, looking on realestate.com, et cetera, very concise in the sense that once your brief is being given to them, and you're wanting to purchase something and you might have a 90-day pre-approval, I'd be very surprised if a buyer's agent hasn't found you something in that 90-day period, right? Whereas on your own, I know people that have got pre-approvals and then they've reapplied for the pre-approvals 3 or 4 times over. So we're talking like almost 12 months and they still haven't found something, right, through whole number of different reasons. But essentially they're very concise. They're not going to sit around 6 months time and say we couldn't find anything for you, right? And this probably goes into the next one is a quicker result. You're in, you've got a strategy, and then you're out again and you've purchased. A buyer's agent should have greater contacts than you, right? So that's a big part of what they bring to the table is they should know the agents and the properties and the vendors much more than you do, right? So they can contact them direct, or more importantly, the vendors or the agents contact the buyer's agent direct to say, look, I've got this property, hasn't been listed yet. Have you got anyone out there that it suits? Away we go, right? And the best properties in my mind are actually bought off market and no one's ever known about it, right? And that's formed a lot of what I've done over the years is bought before everyone else knows about it. It's a great way to get into some discounted property, or at least getting a deal where you don't have to deal with the masses, and it avoids you paying over the odds for a property. They've usually got a process or a system in place that again, streamlines everything for you and makes it very clear cut for you. A step-by-step process where you can't miss anything along the way, right? Whereas in our own lives, we can get caught up emotionally. We're working 9 to 5 or long hours, long weeks, kids, you name it. They're looking from the outside in without emotion, but they've also got a system that is not foolproof, but it's very close to ensure that what you've asked for as a scope is actually going to be seen through in the purchase of that property for you, right? Unless you've given them a scope that's different to what you actually want, then that's obviously a thing that needs to be looked at. But essentially, if you're given a scope, if you've given a scope to the buyer's agent, their systems and tools will ensure that you'll have a nice streamlined approach that gets you a result in a pretty quick time frame. And the last one is probably a combination of a few things that I've spoken about there, and that's the ability to negotiate well. The ability to negotiate well because they know what they're prepared to pay or should be prepared to pay on your behalf. They negotiate well because they know the agent well or the agents, and in some cases know the vendor well, and they know what pushes the buttons to get a result quickly. That might be shorter settlement or sign unconditional, I don't know, something that you know will push the buttons and it's appealing for the vendor, but more importantly, it's giving you the best result as the purchaser or the person that's engaged that buyer's agent in the first place. The positive, so that's the positives of having a buyer's agent. The negatives or the cons of having a buyer's agent, the first one and the biggest one and the obvious one is the cost, right? I gave the example on $1 million property, 20 grand, right? 20 grand off the bat, is that a lot of money? Absolutely, it's a lot of money, isn't it? It's hard to save that amount. It's an amount that you got to come up with extra. In some cases you can include in your finance, but ideally you'd want to pay for it out of your own pocket, so you're not paying it off over the next 15, 20, 30 years. But yes, 20 grand is a lot off the cuff. However, if someone is acting on your behalf and because of their relations and their streamlined process and being in that game full time and knowing so many contacts and agents and vendors, that they've been able to get it for 950 instead of $1 million or 1.1, and they've saved you 50 grand, is it worthwhile paying 20 grand for that outcome, right? The answer is probably yes. Okay. So the devil's in the detail as to what they can provide you, as opposed to just looking purely at the cost of what that is, right? So the cost is definitely the biggest deterrent for a lot of people. And usually not understanding what they can actually, or the value that they can actually bring to the table for you, right? That's the biggest one I find, is they really don't know what the buyer's agent will do for them or the value that they'll provide for them, okay? The second part of it, and I think this one's actually a more important one than the cost, is you engaging a buyer's agent to do it on your behalf is not teaching or educating you in any way, shape or form, right? Before I came here tonight, my 9-year-old son asked me how to do his maths homework, right? What do you think the answer was? I'll do it yourself, but show me your workings and show me what you're having trouble with, right? The teach a kid to fish analogy, right? So no different here. If you're getting a buyer's agent to do it all on your behalf, you don't experience the negotiation skills. You don't experience putting your hand up at auction. You don't experience dealing with all different personalities. You don't understand the market as well. So that feeling of lack of education or lack of knowledge won't put you in good stead for the next 20 or 30 years when you're going to potentially go and find your next property. right? So that for me is a bigger one than not actually or coming up with the money to pay the buyer's agent in the first place. Usually what happens back on the fee is they'll need a commitment fee for them to make a start on your purchase, and then the remaining amount would be paid upon settlement of the property. So you don't have to pay it all up front. Okay. Now, just quickly, I thought, look, I don't agree with the fee service or the model that buyer's agents have around the country. So I'm going to be a disruptor to the buyer's agents in general, right across Australia. So we created a system where we've got a 3-tiered system, an entry-level system, a mid system, and a top end. The top end is a 10K flat fee for buyer's agent service, as well as 12 months of coaching. So I find I've negated that second negative of lack of education, because as I'm doing it for them, I'm actually coaching them and educating them so that they're in a position where they can go and do it. It's probably forcing me out of a job for the next one, but I don't care. I can sleep well at night knowing that I've educated that person and they're on their way, right? And then the bottom tier service is actually a service where they actually go and do it themselves, but I give them a system to go and follow, right? So not much time from me personally to commit to it, just a system that someone can purchase and then go and apply it themselves if they've got the time and the drive and the thirst for knowledge to actually take control themselves and get the end result, right? Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. So look, in my mind, plenty more positives than there are negatives in regards to using a BA, but understanding how they fit for you, whether it be for your own home or an investment property. Like we do a lot of buyer's agent stuff for investors that want to buy out of the local area that they're living in, because we've got hands-on information around the top majors, regionals and majors around the country. So we can, and obviously contacts as well, to be able to get the job done for them. So that's a pretty cool service. But yeah, look, that's all I wanted to share with you on the buyer's agent stuff. So rounding up, paying down your mortgage, cash flow, and buyer's agent. Hopefully, look, they were 3 topics that we're really passionate about, but also we got some feedback from you guys saying that was really what you wanted to listen to. So hopefully you got some information that was valuable for you on that. If not, it didn't cost you anything. Now, only your time, obviously, which I value. I'll just open it up for the next minute or two. Just if anyone's got any specific questions relating to those 3 topics, just sing out. Just put a message in if you can, and I'll answer that as best I can. If you haven't got a question and you just want to have a chat with me, just send me a personal message in Facebook or whatever form you're using. But yeah, I'll open it up for another minute or so, and if there's nothing, then we will call it a night and let you get back on with your day, which is probably over for most of you. So I'd like to, just finalize things. Just even if you can send some messages, doesn't look to be anything coming through. Okay. Even just send me a message to say what you got out of it, or just some form of communication. Sometimes we're just talking into the screen, and I'm used to people talking back at me, so e.g. my kids. So it'd be good to get some interaction from you guys to see what you found valuable, what you wanted more of, what you didn't like, etc. I've got thick skin, so don't hesitate to give me any of that. Yep, great content, really valuable. Thank you. Okay. All right, good. Seems as though the feedback's been pretty good, which is fantastic. First time, and we've had a little bit of a win. That's great. Okay, so there doesn't look to be any questions, so we're going to end it there. But look, I appreciate you all coming on. We did cap it to a minimum amount this time for a reason. So we will continue to run these on a regular basis. So get into our Connect page and just make sure that you put your voice forward as to any topics that you want to cover on these type of forums, and anything else that we can add to improve that would be appreciated. So yeah, guys, everyone, appreciate your time tonight. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll hopefully chat soon.